I'm Susan, and I'm so eager to share with you my topic for this final speech here at the close of our basic communications class here at Bethel CAPS. I want to chat with you all today about why it's important to build a strong sense of ethics in the next generation coming up after us, in ourselves, and some effective skills and practices that we can begin practicing inside our homes right now with ourselves and our children if we have them, that will really build a foundation for a sense of ethics that will stick for life for this next generation. Why is it so important to have this conversation about ethics? Over the last decade or more, increasingly year after year, we see this conversation around ethics becoming more and more important, whether it's with the rise of social media and accessibility and connectivity, or whether it's with more diverse workplaces, more diverse schools, and communities in general. We have beautiful communities that continue to grow and thrive, and we need to be able to have a very strong sense of ethics in ourselves and in our children, as we really want to have the most solid communities where everyone wants to grow and learn together and care for one another effectively. So how can we begin to do this? I like to think of our homes as the perfect training ground. Of course, if you are parents like me, we know that we treat our home like the training ground for building up good citizens and healthy individuals. But how can we bring in that conversation of ethics to that as well? How can we begin to prioritize having that conversation and practicing some of these core foundational skills that not only teach a set of morals to our children, but really establish a foundational sense of ethics for their life? What is the difference between ethics and morals? This is a common question. So I did a little bit of digging, and what I want to chat with you about today is I think we can all relate with morals feeling like more of a list of do's and don'ts, more of that 10 Commandments kind of feel if you are following that example. Morals can often be specific to a specific culture or religious background, and can often feel like a code of conduct, which is a great practice to establish. We should all know where we stand with our code of morals. But I believe that ethics is a conversation that overarches more than just the conversation around morals. And I believe that when we talk about ethics, we are not simply taking that list of do's and don'ts, but we are also looking for a code of conduct, if you will, that overarches the differences in every people group, community, background, worldview, and we're looking for a standard of how to treat one another in community that really brings everyone together. So that's where I see some of the primary differences between morals and ethics. And of course, we can take what we chat about here today about the foundations for a strong sense of ethics, and then from there dig deeper into, okay, now how do we take action on these things and on these principles, and how do we build out from there these habits of do's and don'ts? But let's start back at the foundation, and let's begin to really lock in a strong sense of ethics right here, beginning in the family dynamic, beginning in the home, beginning in our own hearts and minds. Teaching ethics, of course, in the home and beyond is going to influence the next generation that our communities will be. If you think about the community that you live and work in now, or the workplace that you're in right now, who is the next generation coming up into that? And this is why I think it's important to have this conversation, and why I personally chose this topic, because I am a mother and I see how I want to continue to foster this strong sense of ethics in my children and the people that they will influence someday. I believe that we all can relate to the fact that everyone in the world, no matter who they are, what their background is, we all have foundational core needs, such as needing to feel seen, heard, respected, and included. Would you agree? When we feel seen, heard, respected, included, it's amazing how much more confident we feel, what we are able to accomplish in our lives, and how much more motivated we are to serve our communities, to be part of something for the greater good. So on the backbone of these foundational core needs, I want to chat through three skills that we can begin cultivating in our homes right now, starting today, that will strengthen that sense of ethics that will really stick for life. The first skill I want to unpack with you here today is the skill of deep listening to learn something. We talked about listening skills quite a bit in this class, and I know that it impacted so many of us, and we were excited to implement what we learned about listening in our daily lives. So let's take that one step further and talk about how deep listening skills matters when it comes to building a foundational sense of ethics. I think we can all relate to being on the giving and the receiving end of listening. And I want you to think back to a moment in your life where someone listened to you well. You felt so seen and so heard and like you mattered to that person when they were deeply listening to you. Can you picture it? Now I want you to picture a time in your life where you had something important to share and you did not feel like you were listened to well or deeply. How did that feel? We know what it's like to be on the giving and the receiving end of good listening skills or poor listening skills, and how much more confident and empowered we feel, how much more seen and heard we feel when someone is truly taking the time to listen and understand our perspective and where we're coming from. When my daughter is acting out, for example, I know that the first tool I need to pull out of my toolbox, out of my mothering toolkit, is my skill of listening, to ask her questions about how she is feeling and what her needs are in that moment. It's amazing when she feels listened to, that quickly the need to act out becomes much less important to her. And she's much more ready to resolve that conflict more quickly. Which is what brings me to the next foundational skill, which is effective conflict resolution. Dr. Siggy Cohen is a family therapist and coach, and recently she posted an Instagram reel about the topic of how to teach children to fight well. Such an interesting topic, because for many of us, we were raised to believe that fighting is bad. Don't raise a conflict. Don't cause a fight. Don't argue. And for myself, what that has created in me is this very strong sense of aversion to conflict. I don't ever want to be in the middle of a fight, or heaven forbid, cause a fight. So I will often feel like I am very conflict averse. So as an adult, effective conflict resolution is a skill that I have painstakingly looked to strengthen in myself. And it is a skill that I would like to start far earlier with my children on. Imagine if we have, in a diverse community, many community members with the skill of effectively being able to resolve conflicts. How much stronger that community would be. Imagine a school board being able to have a discussion about serious topics and all of them having differing opinions, and there being respectful listening happening and discussion and listening to all sides and objectivity versus taking things personally. All of these skills that help to grow the skill set of effective conflict resolution. Imagine what that would look like. Would that be a stronger community? I would argue yes. So this is, I believe, is the second foundational skill that we can begin practicing right here in our homes today. The third foundational skill I think is so important for really strengthening that sense of ethics for life is widening the circle of concern. What does that look like? It means looking around us and the people that are different from us and learning how to make connections with them. What do we have in common? What do we have that's different and fascinating? Growing up in a small rural town in Wisconsin. I was surrounded by people who all went to the same church as me, dressed similarly as me. We all listened to about the same Christian music. We had very, very similar backgrounds and worldviews, which is wonderful for that growth space. But when I moved out and moved to the city, of course, I was confronted with a lot of personal fears about everyone who was different than me. If someone had a worldview that was very different from mine, I wasn't sure how to approach that. And it was this anxiety causing situation where I wasn't sure how to contribute because I was so afraid of to be completely transparent, I was so afraid of all the differences around me that I was noticing. And so it has taken my adult life, really the past decade, to begin to widen my own circle of concern. And I know how far I have to go, and I am willing to take every mile as it comes. I'm so excited to continue to do that. But studies have shown that even children exposed to a wider circle of diversity when they are young are more confident. They are more likely to be involved in their communities. And so this is why I believe that widening the circle of concern when a child is young, when we are young, is so important and foundational for a sense of ethics that we can take with us into our communities. My son's teacher is a great example of this. Inside her classroom, she has a wide variety of students, all with different holidays that they celebrate, cultural backgrounds, nationalities, diversities. She takes the time intentionally to learn about the differences of each student so that she can relate to them in all the material that she teaches. This is a great example of using this skill in helping children create a strong sense of ethics, even in the classroom. In summary, I know that this conversation scratches the surface of where we can go with teaching ethics to children or honing these foundational skills in ourselves as well. So I encourage you simply to dig deeper, to take what you learned here in this conversation and to get curious about where you want to take this for yourself, and pick one or two of these practices, maybe even to start today, this week. Practice your listening skills with your partner. Take the conflict resolution skill and practice it in your work meetings this week. Or begin to pick up a different book or walk into a different part of your city where people are different and have a different perspective, and widen your circle of concern. Thank you so much for listening.